Thanks for tuning in and welcome to Marketing Bites, Restaurant Growth Unwrapped. I'm your host, Brian Siemienas, the Vice President of Restaurant Solutions for Nift. Today, I welcome our guest, Erin Levzow. Hello, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really excited for today's conversation. You've had a fantastic and interesting path in your career. You started off in the casino space, working for some of the titans in the industry of Caesars and MGM. And then you worked with some great hospitality and restaurant brands, including Wingstop, Freebird's World Burrito, Marcus Hotels and Resorts, and Del Taco. How did all these experiences shape the person you are today?
Oh, good gosh. I mean, they all had a lot to do with it. I would say when I talk to someone, and nothing wrong with not having moved companies, but when I talk to someone, they only know what they know, right? I've had all this wealth of experiences that people think I'm much older than I am, good or bad, because I've truly been able to move around and see how different industries and different companies work, whether it's the big conglomerates, right? Like Caesar's corporate is huge, all the way down to like Freebirds, which was 100 locations, so much smaller. So it gives you an understanding and appreciation. And now I'm able to come to all these conversations with a very different viewpoint.
Okay, currently you're working at Batch and Box. For those not familiar with your brand, can you describe it?
Yes. So Batch and Box is a gourmet cookie company using sustainable ingredients, and they're based out of San Diego. There's a couple locations, and then they ship nationwide. So a lot of it's through corporate gifting, as well as the ability to ship to friends or family, or when your kid's away at college, to be able to send them a video message with a beautifully packaged box of fresh cookies that they can just pop in the microwave. Unbelievable. And I will tell you from my teenagers' mouths, they say they're the best cookies they've ever had.
And teenagers know cookies, that's for sure. Mine managed to test them out, whatever city we're in, finding whatever the hottest and greatest one is. So looking at your resume, one of the most unique items, and would be remiss if I didn't ask about it, is your time at Figure Eight, which is the parent company of Museum of Ice Cream. Mm-hmm. So many things, unless you're lactose intolerant. Can't imagine you not loving ice cream, but have never been there. Can you explain what it is and what your time was like at Museum of Ice Cream?
Yeah, Museum of Ice Cream. So it's an experiential play place where you get to be hands-on. And people used to say, I was the chief commercial officer. Do you sell ice cream? I said, no. I said, we don't even make ice cream. And they were like, well, what do you sell? And I was like, joy, happiness. And it turns out everybody loves joy and happiness. And being able to jump in sprinkles, whether you're with your significant other or kids, they have 6 locations. So Singapore, Chicago, New York, Austin, Miami, and Boston. And they're, compared to restaurants, their reoccurring revenue is incredibly high, right? And it would be the same as having like 60 restaurants in one. And again, you're saying like, well, but you're selling ice cream. No, you do get to eat unlimited ice cream, but that is only one part of it. It's the ability to play, engage, be hands-on, get to know someone you walk in the door with, whether it's a first date or you're rekindling a marriage.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned New York, and I'm going to have to go there because, especially with the kids, when you say samples, and they certainly will try every and any flavor that's put forth.
Yes,
for them.
Exactly.
Okay, and your latest endeavor, you launched a podcast, Bite Size and Bossy, with your co-hosts Tammy and Chrissy, that features women from all levels of the restaurant industry. What was the motivation to do it, and how is it going?
So if you ask me the exact moment that Tammy, Chrissy, and I had this idea, I couldn't even tell you. But I will tell you, we've had so many conversations. And I always say one of my first conferences, the Restaurant Leadership Conference, years ago, great conference. I showed up and I was one of very few women. There might have been, and I actually got excited that there was another woman there, and it ended up being the girlfriend of an owner of a company. And I went, okay, so I really am like one of the only women here. And we've continued to see some of that change over time and evolve. And I get asked to go on podcasts, and I'm grateful to be on this podcast, but oftentimes they are hosted by men, right or wrong. they're hosted by men. And I said, where are all the female podcast hosts? Where are the women lifting up other women? And someone said to me, well, we're really busy. And I said, yeah, no, we are really busy. But where are the other podcast hosts or females raising their hand? And they said, we just need more women to raise their hand. We'll happily pick them. So I said, all right, let's raise our hand, ladies. And so Chrissy, Tammy, and I got together, put our heads together. We came up with Bite-Sized and Bossy and this idea that it's the restaurant podcast you really didn't know you needed until you heard it. And it is about encouraging and lifting up women throughout all spaces of restaurant and hospitality. We've recently had the CEO, Heather from Taco John's, the CEO, Shannon from Habit Burger. We had Satine, who's leading Women in Restaurant Leadership Conference. And we have many more guests coming up as well. But it's been astounding, the feedback we've had just out of the gate. And you can listen on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube. But just right out of the gate, the amount of feedback all three of us have gotten back saying that it was needed, that thank God we're doing something like this is really impactful. So we know we can help make a difference, especially as we raise awareness around making sure that women have the same seat at the table as everyone else.
Yeah, no, I've listened to a couple episodes, obviously knowing you guys and Tammy, and love it, and even unfortunately been around a little while as we talk about age, and you're dead on going to the industry conferences, and it's great seeing the change where before it was a couple women, and to the point now, my partner and I, Preston at Nift, are actually going to the Women in Restaurant Leadership Conference and are excited about it. And I mean, I saw the sold out banner when I went on the other day.
We'll be there. We'll be doing live broadcasting as well. So we're excited.
Yeah. Okay. Given your background, expert in marketing and your history, let's get into some marketing specifics. We know the challenges that 2024 face. There's some brands that have been able to rise above that, but fewer and far between. Hopefully 25 will continue to see more come out of it. But, from a marketer perspective, there's so much competition, effectiveness. Some will say oversaturation of number of concepts. What marketing initiatives have you been seeing out there that have been providing results, either that you've done recently in the past or that others are sharing with you?
So I have a odd take on marketing because I think marketing only works if someone's already mentally ready for it. So what that means is if I don't know I want to go on vacation, I'm not ready to see the room I'm going to stay in on vacation. It means I have to persuade them. And so backing into how we tell a story, how we're in front of the right audience, and I know it's right time, right place, etc. But it's really taking those psychographics and going, all right, what's this person doing? How is their behavior? And when does it make sense for me to insert myself in the party? I think a lot of brands treat all still to this day, treat all marketing the same. And you don't need to do that. It doesn't have to be the same depending on what channels. So paid search isn't dead. You still need paid search, branded and non-branded, typically. But you still need to play in social media. But that's a different story. You don't say the same thing on paid search that you say on social media or what you're going to put in your magazine ad. And I still think brands are still trying to figure out, like, is there a one bullet, one silver bullet? There's no silver bullets. Otherwise, none of us would have jobs, right? And if there was a silver bullet, believe you me, I'd be shooting that gun all day long, but there isn't. And so we have to try different levers and see what works. And we have to look at seasonality. I'm not going to sell mittens in the middle of summer, probably, unless I come up with a real weird reason on why you need those mittens. So looking and leaning into seasonality, it also goes back to when brands look at me and they go, well, I'm just going to divide my budget evenly all year long. And I was like, cool. So you evenly have sales all year long. And they're like, well, no. And I was like, then that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And being able to work through that is really, really exciting. But also marketing isn't, I mean, if you read some of Dale Carnegie's books from long, long time ago, this kind of winning friends, influencing people, the same theories hold up through marketing as well. And that was like 1920s.
Yeah, no, to your point, what's old is coming back. I mean, there's, from effectiveness, and we know all the buzzwords, AI and this and that, we're at the conferences, but there's still plenty of people, direct mail's working, billboards
Yeah.
are working, and all those print publication. I mean, there still
Hmm.
are some out there, few and far between, but there still are. And, know a lot of people that are having success with those.
Hmm.
But as we look at success, certainly marketers and the industry as a whole, top line sales, same store sales are, the big thing people are looking at. But as a marketer, certainly that's the end result. But there's a lot of other KPIs, and results that help
Hmm.
deliver that. What do you look at to see, is marketing working and delivering for you?
So with analytics, I believe all analytics make you look at another analytic. I wish there was something that I could look at and go, oh, end all be all. That's revenue, right? And I always think it's funny when people say, what's your goal? And I was like, to make more money. And they're like, oh, okay, well, what else? And I'm like, that's really it. Like, if you do that, everything else becomes mute. Nothing else matters. But otherwise, you look at each channel and you figure out how do you measure it, right? So if I say I want to do an awareness campaign, it doesn't make sense for me to be like, looking necessarily right at revenue right out of the gate. Now it's important, even when you do brand awareness, but now it's going to be like impression volume, viewability, how many engagements it might have had. And viewability, I still think gets lost on a lot of people where they go, well, what's viewability? I was like, it's very simple. Did they see it? That's it. And they go, well, how do you know? Well, you need to have trusted sources studying all this. And you can do lots of different kind of brand lift studies to see if they have a recall. And I'll be honest, I get a lot of those brand lift studies on Facebook, and I'll be like, did you see this ad in the last 4 days? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think I did. They could have shown it to me 12 times. Didn't say I saw it. So I think being able to back in all those numbers. Now, where we get, where I get worried is when people put too much stake in one number, right? Outside of revenue,
Mhm.
where they go, well, our engagement was this, so everything else doesn't matter. And I'm like, did it do anything? Like, what does that look like? What number does that lead us to the next number? And really being able to study those results. Everybody wants a dashboard. I get it. But really, you need to be able to dig in and look at all the results.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because you talk about the silver bullet, and I always joke about the silver bullet, and I think we sort of said the same thing. Say the same thing is if I had the silver bullet, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be on a
Correct.
beach,
Hmm.
consulting and selling everyone else, how to make that silver bullet
Hmm.
work because it's not any one thing; it's a lot of little things.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think sometimes we get caught up in, the marketer. I'll argue is the toughest job in the
Hmm.
industry, and no disrespect, operators of a lot, but depending on your company, you've got menu, you've got the customer service, you've got reviews, which nowadays, when we first started, not everyone had that phone, so
Yeah.
it didn't get out instant, or as I like to say, when you dealt with crisis management, you had a little bit of time to deal with the crisis. Nowadays, literally, by the time you get a phone call, it may be you're already dead in the water.
Yeah.
So as you said, all those KPIs are important, and especially as we talk to a lot of partners in restaurants today, you may be the same brand in very different need states. I mean, if your restaurant's opened, certainly getting that repeat visitation may be more
Hmm.
important than if you're doing a new market entry and your brand's not known. If you're focusing on the end result of the sales, you better get those impressions and get that awareness building and that
Exactly.
engagement for the brand.
Well, and whether you're sales, marketing, filling that pipeline, it comes back to that.
Mhm.
If you don't have awareness, it's going to dry up and then your
Yeah.
bucket's empty. And when your bucket's empty, everybody goes, well, what happened? Well, you cut the budget. What are we supposed to do? Right. So it all has a time and place.
Okay, one of the big industry topics, and industry got away from it, value proposition. You saw a lot of the brands go up. The
Yeah.
QSRs are back in the space of the $5 fight to get that
Hmm.
ultimate meal. Casuals, you've got Applebee's and Chili's playing at the $9.99,
Hmm.
$10.99. Other brands everywhere in between, the sub shops at the $6, $7. And then you've got other
Yeah.
brands that are, what, our value as a brand speaks for itself. You had experience in this area, certainly while you were VP of marketing, technology, e-commerce, and digital brand at Del Taco. and it was during the COVID years. What is your view on the value play, and are you happy not to be front and center in that battle right now?
I am happy to not be front and center in the value play right now. However, I think it has a time and place. I think you have to decide who you are in the market, right? Are you the Walmart always low prices type person, right? Tacos, Del Taco is known for you could get 2 tacos, Jack in the Box, 2 tacos for 99 cents. So you've taken your space. Now, when inflation hits, that's a problem. So meat goes up, tortillas go up, eggs go up. Now we have an issue. So it's hard to stay in that value, but everything goes up. And so you're constantly watching the market going, what's the threshold? Where do you price yourself out? And I would say like there's a point and strategy in how you take price. And so, I mean, Starbucks, my drink didn't go from $4 to $8 overnight. It slowly went up over like 3 or 4 years. And every time it went up, I was like, I can't pay this extra 14 cents. And now you look back and you're like, I'm paying $8 for a drink. That's insane. So I think there is a time and place. I think it's interesting. You said Applebee's and Chili's, and they are playing off of each other right now. Applebee's had the low menu. Now Chili's has the lower menu. And I actually think their brands help each other in some respects. So when you think Applebee's, you're immediately like, or we could go to Chili's, right? Like it's like you put them in the same ballpark. So therefore that brand equity is actually helping each other, whether they like it or not. In fact, I took the kids to Applebee's this weekend, and it is like, it's pretty cost effective to go there. And I was quite surprised because I hadn't been there in a while. And one of my kids said, well, we could have gone to Chili's. And I went, that's brand equity there. They're combining those two. I think during COVID, value did really well. QSR did great during COVID. We came out of 2023. People wanted out. Restaurants were doing great. 2024 was a hard landing for a lot of restaurants because they wanted it to be same store sales growth like 2023. And during COVID, when we were all shut in and eating our feelings, it just doesn't exist. Then you have Ozempic and like how that's affecting restaurant sales. So I think 2024 was challenging. I think we're going to see a lot more leaning into the craftsmanship that goes into the food and the story that we're telling around the food, especially if people can't afford all the same amount of food they were ordering before.
Okay, you talk about brand equity, and one of the big winners, Wingstop. You were there for almost 10 years. Any insight into the success they've seen in achieving the just astronomical same-store sales growth over such a long period of time, as so many others in the competitive set and industry are struggling?
So when I was brought into Wingstop, I was brought in to lead e-commerce, digital, social. Excuse me. And with that, at that time, they had online ordering where it was like every single package was like 1, 2, 3. Do you want 5 wings and 5 boneless? 6 bone-in and 6 boneless? Do you want a 10-piece, right? And so everything was set up almost like a combo meal, which is traditional. And we went, this is not easy. This is not easy to order. Like, I don't know if I want 12 and 12. But I want multiple flavors. And so we actually worked with Olo at the time, and we created a sliding scale. This didn't exist anywhere else. And this idea that you can change the scale and pick the flavors, and we really streamlined it, and we saw it take off. We also did a lot of studies around who is the customer. And your franchisee is not necessarily your customer, right? They might think they are. A lot of times they do. But in this case, it was 18 to 24-year-old African-American, Hispanic, multicultural. And then you had to go, well, what do they think is cool? Like, are we even leaning into what they think is cool? And I think that really, as we redefined the brand back then, really set them up for success. And at the time, Charlie Morrison was the CEO, and he did a great job of taking what was a great product and harnessing it and letting it grow and putting the right people in the right spots to run. And so you have development in one angle, running to build as many as possible with the right franchisees, the right setup, the right markets based on the customer information. You have marketing re-identifying and rebranding, and technology laying the foundation. And you go, okay, we got this, right? And then you pick and choose what you need to do. You can't be everything to everyone all the time. So you can't go, well, we need an app and we need this and we need this and we need this. No, stop. We need to build a plan. And they, I feel like, did that really well. It's continued to be successful. And to be honest, those fries, I mean, there's a reason they are called crack fries by so many people when they order them, because they do. There's unbelievable. The right seasoning, that house-made ranch, just, it's really good.
So you talk about the little adjuster, and I sort of felt like that was, to me, it was dominoes on the delivery set, almost the early gamification to make it fun to go and order. And to your point, that demographic definitely loves it. I'm a little bit more, I don't care if I know what I want, great, but I see my kids, they, like many, when TikTok shut down recently, we're, oh my God, we have taken to the emergency room. They're having withdrawal right now. So, that generation, certainly you guys were early in, that gamification process in ordering. So moving on, one of the other ones, and I think has settled down a little bit, third party.
Yeah.
I maintain the stance that, and again, if you're one of the big conglomerates, maybe you're getting a good percentage, but if you're smaller, you may be closer to that 30%, unfortunately, is view it as a marketing cost. View it as, and I'm a big one and learned, from great people throughout my career, most recently at Gene Lee and the research team at Darden, got to be frictionless to a consumer. I don't get it, but there's a lot of people that literally go to Uber and that's how they shop. And if you're not there, you're not getting the order. What, do you agree with that? What's your take and what's your experience? Because a lot of CFOs would, 30%, that's insane. Don't go on the platform.
Yeah. So I think a lot of brands tried to say like, oh, well, we're going to just be on DoorDash. We're just going to be on Uber. I do believe you have to be where your customer are. A customer is typically loyal to a platform they know, right? Something, because we're all creatures of habit. So if I go to DoorDash most of the time, chances are I don't want to go put in a new order on Grubhub. I also typically order the same thing every time. So I want the one-click reorder, whether it's native through you, and you can give that to me, which is great, or if it's through DoorDash. Now, I think the rub, which still happens, is, all right, you're paying a 30% or whatever the commission structure is. DoorDash wants you to have the same pricing as your direct site. Well, I can't do that. My profits are gone. I already had limited profits due to inflation. What do you want me to do? And they go, well, we'll give you some extra money to market it. And we're like, that doesn't help. Like, it's still eating away at the profits. And so being able to raise those prices a little bit, and that's what you see a lot of restaurants still doing, whether we like it or not. And now you think maybe the customer's smart enough. They're not. The customer's not going, well, is it $10 over here and it's $8 over here? That doesn't make sense to me. They're not thinking about that. When they're hungry, they're willing to pay that premium in order to have someone show up at their door and put it in front of the door. Now, if we could get the delivery drivers not to put the sodas right in front of the door where you open the door and throws over the soda, that'd be great. But we'll take it little by little.
Yeah, and to your point, I'm really hoping, with Darden and Olive Garden, that starts taking grasp in some of the other big chains, and same pricing. And again, if you want that convenience of delivery, you can always go pick it up, or you can pay, here's what your delivery charge is. Because,
Yes.
As someone who's trying to build a brand, there's nothing worse than when, that was sort of expensive. Well, no, it wasn't expensive. It's because you ordered via a third party.
Exactly.
So we talked about challenges of a restaurant marketer. What do you think are the biggest challenges that restaurant marketers are facing today?
I think it's still resources. And to be honest, it's the respect of other departments. So I think there are plenty of people in every profession in the world that give the people in that profession a bad name, right? So you have people who say, I'm a marketer. And this is going to sound really jaded. It's not meant to. But you have people who go, I'm a marketer. And you're like, oh, I'm a great marketer. And you're, okay, tell me about your marketing skills. And they go, well, I painted this photo. And I was like, great, you're a great graphic designer. That's not necessarily a marketer. Like, you need to decide where your strengths lie. And then you have, what happens is there's people that go into companies and they sell it in really well. And then the CEO or the CTO or whoever gets burnt by it. And they go, well, no, marketing seems like not that great. And you're like, no, that was one person. You can't put us all in the same category. We're not all in the same category. We should, as marketers, care about finance. We should be driving revenue. We should be just as accountable to that P&L as operations. And when I find someone where typically I'll have a conversation with a CEO who says, oh, well, marketing's just pretty pictures. And I was like, then either you don't understand marketing or someone has burned you in the past on what they thought marketing was. So I think that is still our biggest challenge, is building that reputation, and that we actually do drive results and we work alongside our peers to drive those results.
Yeah, it's funny, as marketers, we almost need a rebranding exercise. Although we
Mm-hmm.
are seeing, and to be fair, when I started my career, it was all about impressions and the pretty,
Yeah.
graphics. And I think as marketers, we've gotten much more sophisticated. We've been forced to, and you're starting to see more marketers make it into the CEO position than before.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, COO or CFO, and outside of
Yeah.
there, whereas today.
Well, on data too, just like you're talking about, where when I started in digital and data, and I said, oh, this is the type of CMO we're going to see in the future, is a data centric CMO. I literally was laughed out of a room years ago. They said, no. They said, no, all of our CMOs come from traditional backgrounds. They've worked on agency commercials, never data focused. And I said, nope, it's going to change. And no one believed me. And look, here we are.
Well, you and I both are examples. So you obviously a casino world, Hard
Yeah.
Rock. When I worked on the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and
Mhm.
Casino projects, and we both know, as I like to say, there's a reason those beautiful properties are in Vegas, and it's not because people are walking away with huge winnings all the time, but
Correct. Yeah.
it's all data analytics. And then I was fortunate to be on the timeshare where you spend huge money marketing. You better have your data right. And I think you're seeing more and more people coming into the restaurant marketing world with that data background
Yes.
versus that creative side.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So as far as you look at things, what do you see 2025 looking like? We've seen a couple brands coming out. We still have a lot of brands that are having challenges and
Mm-hmm.
bankruptcies. Some of the older brands. Some will argue we've got oversaturation. I think in the burger category, you saw it with a lot of the
Yeah.
bankruptcy filings. Some are saying the chicken's going to be in that path down the road. What do you see 2025 and beyond?
Well, I think it has to do with inflation and how far we're going to end up with cost of goods, how much price elasticity someone can take or handle. But I do think 2025 is a resetting year. So I think 2024, everybody, even though we all knew going into January of 2024, like, hey, this year's probably not going to end super well, right? Recession talks, soft landing, election year, all of that. Everybody knew it. Yet I was surprised at how many CEOs I talked to who was like, we were surprised. And you were like, what? Like, what do you mean you were surprised? So I think 2025 is the year that everybody has to pitch, is like, we're stabilizing. We're stabilizing. We're getting our ducks in a row. Whether a company is filing bankruptcy and they're figuring out where to go from there. Because I think a lot of times when people see, oh, they filed bankruptcy, everybody's like, oh, they're closing everything and they're done. No, that's not, it actually doesn't mean that. It actually just means like, I got to write all this money off my book somehow and I get to keep going, which took me a long time to understand, because I was like, no, if you do that, don't you just like go away, right? No, nope. So figuring out that stable path forward, what that looks like. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times with exec teams, what happens is when something like this hits, they don't know any different. They just go, we need to replace our executive team. And you don't have to do that necessarily. If you have the right team in place, they should be able to pivot and handle any headwinds that come, as long as you're studying them.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a lot of good points there, the bankruptcy. And I think we get too ingrained in this industry because you're right. The average consumer, maybe some of the big brands, you'll get
Yeah.
media coverage. But, to me, the bankruptcy gives you the opportunity to close those albatrosses that have bad
Mhm.
leases that, as marketers and even executive teams, you
Yeah.
spend 90% of your time on, knowing deep in your heart the likelihood of turning it around is pretty slim. So,
Yeah.
that's why
Well,
I
and
was
the
always envious of
customer doesn't
brands.
understand. Like, people think our industry news, granted, I get sucked into our industry news too, but they're like, oh, the customers are going to see this. No, they're not. And then, but you know what your customer does know? If your kitchen was dirty, if your floors were dirty, if your bathrooms were dirty, that's what they're going to see. So, like, if you can focus on those operations and, like, sometimes let the PR be the PR.
Yeah, and as you bring up the turnover on the executive team, that's the one thing that's concerning in our industry now.
Hmm.
Because in back when we started, and unless you did something that was just stupid and a violation, as an
Yeah,
executive and a leader in an organization, you got year and a half, 2 years to try
yep,
to navigate, make your changes. I mean, and we've got mutual people that literally that we know 8 months, a year. I mean, you can barely learn where all your locations are sometimes, and
correct.
it's sad how quick they're expecting turnarounds, especially with brands, as you mentioned, that don't have the resources or the staffing, and
Yes.
changes can't be made that quick.
And I do think 2025 will be the year we're going to start to see a lot of tech consolidation for restaurants. I think what happened, again, post COVID boom, which I'm so sick of talking about COVID, but it existed. And people went, I need to have online ordering. Some didn't have it already. They have their POS, they have all of these different tech platforms, their training, their reviews. And all of a sudden, someone sat down at one point and went, holy crap, I pay for all this. Well, yeah. And you don't pay a little bit, you pay a good amount. So now finding some of these solutions we're seeing come on the market that are bringing everything together. But actually, what it does is bring the picture of the customer together, which turns out what we've wanted for years, but couldn't get in a place, right? That's how CDPs came to exist was someone went, oh, you have a CRM, but what if I want more data? And they went, well, let's call it a CDP. And we went, what does that mean? And they went, it's a data platform. And you're like, where does that live? And they're like, anywhere you want it to. And we're going to call it a CDP. It was very exciting. And now we're seeing if you actually build that as your hub and your center with some of these companies, it actually works quite well. And so I think we'll see that. It'll allow for some of those cost efficiencies a lot of companies are looking for.
Yeah, certainly in the tech space, and we didn't have a chance to really get into it. I always viewed it death by 1,000 paper cuts. Oh,
Correct.
it's only this much more. Well, we
Yeah.
all know how tight the P&L margins are, and oh, okay, you get a product or a
Mhm.
software. Well, it doesn't do X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z. Well, I need X, Y, and Z to get that full picture. Doesn't matter if it does, S&T well.
Mhm.
So I hope that we see that in the coming year. So moving on, my favorite part of the episode is getting to know my guests as individuals, unique personalities, and moving into some personal questions. If you could go back and give yourself advice when you started your journey, what would it be?
I would say to keep taking risks and stop worrying what other people think because they're not worried about me. And I think remembering that when I walk into a room and I think everybody's looking at me, they're not looking at me. And so I think I probably second guessed myself a lot more than I needed to at a young age. It served me well, but I would go back and change that or do that again.
When you were in elementary school, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I want to be an actor,
Okay. First job, whether
a
it was
corn
junior high or high
detasseler.
school.
I was a corn detasseler, which meant in the hot summers in August in Illinois, you put fully clothed boots, hat, gloves, walk through the corn, and you pulled the tassels off corn. And I got paid pennies. And I will tell you, if I can do that job, I can do anything.
Okay, so I grew up in a suburb outside of Chicago. You must have been Southern Illinois.
I was northern. I was Rockford near Byron near Rockford, Illinois, and then went to school at Illinois State in Bloomington Normal.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So there were some cornfields up there, most in the south. So, as a tribute to your past job at Museum of Ice Cream, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
I like the chunks of cookie dough and chocolate chip cookie dough.
Okay. What's your favorite activity when you're not working?
Uh, Competitive ballroom dance.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask a follow up.
Okay.
So, how did you get into that, and how often do you compete, and any award winning?
Um, so I have won awards. So there's lots of different types of competing. You have your cha-cha, rumba, swing, waltz, tango, foxtrot. We have kind of showcase or theatrical performances. And I got into it a little over 4 years ago and started. I thought I would never compete. I was just learning like some social dancing. I wanted to learn the salsa. My kids all fell in love with it. So all my kids dance now too. And now I'm addicted to competing. There's something really fun about it. Um, Someone said to me one day, well, a lot of women do it for the pretty dresses. I said, I'm not a lot of women. That's my least favorite part is putting on this costume, but I love getting out on the floor and dancing. There's something pure joy, inner childlike that comes out. And in fact, I compete tomorrow afternoon.
That's really neat. I imagine you gotta at weddings or formal events where there's a dance floor, you gotta
Oh
just
yeah.
be the center of attention and like,
I
oh my
usually
goodness,
miss
look at
the
her.
entire meal because I'm like on the floor the entire time. The moment the band starts playing, I'm like, oh, let's go dance.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure people are watching you because there's nothing where most people are not great dancers. You'll have a couple that do the, 2 or 3 lessons, but every once in a while when you see someone great, it's like, holy cow, look at
I
that
think
up
it's
there.
fun. I think everybody should learn to dance and then just have fun. Like just be carefree.
Okay. Back into the industry. What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, right now, I just got over being sick, so I really love Panera recently, but my kids are passionate about Noodles and Company, so we love that place.
Okay. Favorite city and or country to visit?
New York City.
Okay. Are
Love it.
you uh, go to the Broadway shows, do the tourist
Broadway, just walking
attractions, Central?
around. I feel very comfortable walking around the streets of New York for some reason. I think it's really beautiful. I know not everyone shares that opinion, but if I didn't have kids long time ago, I probably could have moved to New York. But that would be one of those young age second guess yourself, oh God, I can't move to New York feelings. But now if I did it again, maybe I would have ended up in New York.
Okay, favorite part of the island, although Brooklyn now has become trendy and safer to
Yeah,
go
I
to.
mean, I like all of it, but I do like because Museum of Ice Cream was in Soho, so like getting to know that area, walking through like Chinatown. Um, I still love Times Square because of my theater background. Like I could sit on those stairs in Times Square all night long and people watch. There's just something beautiful about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. New York, we go. My family's a huge Broadway, so you name the
Yeah.
show. My daughters, so we go probably every 4 months. And I'm like you, Times Square. There's some like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere near there. But
Mhm.
when I was at Hard Rock, we had that prime location. It had like an incredible marquee, and I used
Yeah.
to just love going out there when it wasn't cold, more in the summer,
Yeah,
and just watch people watching because, as you said,
exactly.
the personalities are just incredible going by around there. What are you most proud of in your professional career?
Probably my team members and people I've been able to lift up. And uh, you never know if you're making a difference when you're in it. And then when you get those emails or that card in the mail that says you made a difference in my life, I'm like a proud mom. I couldn't be prouder of the people I've been able to touch and help and grow.
Okay, you attend a lot of conferences. What's the speaker you hope is on the agenda speaking when you attend one?
I mean, there's lots of them, but I'm a big fan. A mutual friend of mine, Ryan Berman, he wrote a book called Return to Courage. He has the Courageous podcast. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And every time I've seen him speak, he just leaves you going, oh, yeah, I need to change my life again, right? Like I need to step outside of my comfort zone again.
Okay, what's something most people don't know about you?
Other than the ballroom, probably that I'm not as strong as I look. I think a lot of people, when I get feedback from others, they go, "Oh, you're so strong," and I go, "Oh, I'm not strong. I'm so not strong." But I think it's uncovered the truth of what being human really is as I've grown up and being able to have conversations with people where you go, "I'm allowed to be." I call myself a shit show on the inside, but I'm allowed to have emotions just like you're allowed. And I don't, as a leader, you don't always have to be the strongest person in the room. You just have to be able to show up and use some of that vulnerability to help lift others up.
Yeah, no, great one. And it's always tough, and we tend to be in stressful situations. But I try to
Mm.
remind, and I was fortunate to travel the world, and despite what the media and people say, 99.999% of the world want to provide for their
Yep.
family, be successful, and I've had some doozy screw ups myself and others. And most people don't wake up, okay, how can I make life miserable
Right.
and create stress and pressure? And to your point, I've been there where I've been yelled at to the point of, ooh, I'm not that strong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a great one. But unfortunately, Erin, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for joining us. And here's to celebrating the industry we love and serve. Until next time, stay hungry for success.